Hello and welcome to Movies in a Nutshell with me, Marc Farquhar.
Myself, Darren Horne.
And I, Paul Day.
Together, we're here to bring you quick, simple, entertaining breakdowns of movies, whether you've seen them or not.
From timeless classics to hidden gems or the latest blockbusters in cinemas, this is your movie safe space.
But unlike most movie podcasts, we're not a review show. That means no endless deep dives, no unnecessary opinions, just value for your time.
If it's a movie you've seen, you will probably learn something new, and if it's a movie you haven't seen yet, we'll help you decide if it's worth your time.
Don't stress if you haven't seen that must-watch classic. We've got you covered with everything you need to know.
Now, there's a moment in every episode where we'll give you the choice. You can pause the podcast, go and watch the movie, come back and join us as we head into Spoiler City, or you can just come with us for the ride. So, grab some popcorn, settle in, and let's dive into this week's movie. Today's episode is Back to the Future, which was my choice. Let's go through the diagnostics. So it was released in 1985. It is rated 12. The runtime is 1 hour 56. Stars Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Tom Wilson, Leah Thompson, and Crispin Glover. It is currently only available if you have Sky, the movie subscription. Everywhere else, you can get it on most of the places, but you have to rent or buy it. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. The original budget was $19 million. And it ended up taking $381.1 million.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
That is insane. So let's move on to the synopsis. So I'm going to do my synopsis first.
Okay.
Then I'm going to look at the
official.
the official one. So my synopsis is: Marty McFly finds himself back in 1955 after traveling in a modified DeLorean created by his eccentric scientist friend, Doc Brown. What follows is a series of unbelievable events as he tries to find his way back home to 1985.
That's got Quantum Leap vibes.
Yeah. I always, like when I do these, I always try and not give too much away, but explain roughly what it's about.
I'd watch it. Sounds good.
Okay, here's the official synopsis. See what you think. Marty McFly, 17-year-old high school student, is accidentally sent back to 1955 in a time-traveling DeLorean car invented by his friend Doc Brown.
I actually kind of like that because I think the hook is the time-traveling DeLorean car.
And less is more.
In fact, yeah, they could have just been... This movie is about a time-traveling DeLorean car, and I'm in. I don't need to know who the characters are.
Yeah, there's a concept on paper. It works. But a lot of the synopsis we've looked at, they give loads away. They go into loads of detail, and you get past the first few lines, you're like, okay, I get the gist.
That's why.
Or you're spoiling it for me now.
That's why Snakes on the Plane was such a good movie. And that's why Samuel Jackson signed on based on the title. He was like, I know what this movie is about. I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm in.
So that was my synopsis versus the official synopsis. Are we agreed that mine's better?
Of course. Yeah.
So at its core, what is this movie about?
Well, I heard the two Bobs talking about it, and they said it's about if you could go back to high school with your dad, would your dad have got on with you? And I think that's kind of fascinating because I'm dating someone at the moment, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you would have bullied me at school.
Yeah, but there's all the interesting themes about morality and looking at basically the consequences of your parents messing up.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, I think it's about how is it like butterfly effect? It's one small thing in your past can change not just your future, but your kid's future, everyone's future. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you get from this, Paul?
This is one of them that's ingrained in me, so it's very hard to take a step back because some films are just in your DNA, aren't they? And
if there's anyone listening now who hasn't seen this film, please email us in hello@moviesinanutshell.com.
Yeah, we need to know because, so taking that step back is really difficult. But I've seen this same interview that Darren was talking about with the two Bobs talking about it, and they just basically wanted to make a time travel film and said, what's our way in? And it was that yearbook and saying, would I have really got on with them? Would they have bullied me? And that makes me laugh. But there's two levels to this film, I feel. One is the level of when you were a kid, and there's the time-traveling DeLorean. I'm not giving any spoilers because that's in the synopsis.
It's in the picture.
That part of it and the excitement of teenagers on skateboards and that 80s vibe. And then when you get older, I think you start to appreciate the other bits of the film as well. There's definitely layers to it. Even though it's kind of this family-friendly film, there's definitely these different layers about generations and different timed... different periods of time.
Yeah, the 50s and the 80s. Whoa, what a great cross-section of times to compare.
But one of the things that shocked me was you said it was a 12, did you say?
Yeah, 12.
Yeah, I saw it when I was young. I always imagined it was a PG or a U.
Whoa, really?
I know there's some themes in there that
There's some dark scenes in that movie.
I know, but I think just because I saw it, I just always assumed it was just.
Because there's sexual assault in that movie.
But again,
There's hints of that. Yeah.
As a kid, though, skateboards and
it's what you
speed
focus
and
on.
DeLoreans.
Yeah, but some parts will actually go over your head.
Yeah,
but
totally.
it doesn't mean you should see it, though.
No, I guess not. Would you still call it a family film? Well, we're sort of giving the overview.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's still a family
Overall,
film, isn't it?
Yeah. Ratings and reviews. So, obviously, across the board, this has been reviewed a lot of times. It is interesting looking at some of the reviews from like years and years ago versus some of the reviews from now. Obviously, younger people who didn't grow up with the movie watching it now have a different review than someone who did grow up with it.
Yeah.
So IMDb gave it 8.5 out of 10.
Solid, but I'm
wouldn't say
surprised it's not higher.
Metacritic gave it 8. The users gave it 87. The critics gave it 87. The users gave it. I don't know why they do this. So the critics is out of 100 and the users are out of 10. So the users gave it a 9 out of 10, but the critics gave it 87 out of 100. I don't know why they do that.
Very strange. But
So Rotten Tomatoes was the critics was 93 and the users was 95. Their popcorn meter, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so it's pretty across the board.
Tarantino
Pretty
calls it a
unanimous.
perfect movie. It's one of
Does
his
he?
perfect movies up there with, I don't know what else he has, The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow. It's interesting, different people opinions of a perfect movie.
Yeah. And Tarantino doesn't like movies in the 80s. Like most of them will be from the 70s or so. So it's a rare kind of gem that he's highlighted.
it is a gem. When I rewatch it, I just can't stop smiling, and I just think I've seen this so many times, but
Yeah.
there's so much to enjoy.
There's
It seems to hit a bit of everything in there, doesn't it?
It does. So let's look at some of the reviews. Or what's like to call it? What do the grown-ups think?
Yeah, nice.
What do the grown-ups think? Which fits in especially well for this sort of thematic thing of
Yeah, it
generations, doesn't it? What do the
It does.
grown-ups think?
So Rex Reed of the New York Post writes, Lost in confusion, director Robert Zemeckis and co-scriptwriter Bob Gale don't know how to end the far-out fantasy they've created, and the smell of an equally silly sequel permeates the air like a gas leak. Interesting.
That's hard. But also, I wonder if it's because Zemeckis had a run of flops before this.
That's right.
So people were going expecting
Yeah, I
more
mean,
of that.
he did. I think he did just win just before this with Romance in the Stone, but before that it was
That's
like
right.
3 flops.
Okay.
So I don't
Used
think he had
cars, he'd done something else.
used cars with Kurt Russell though. I mean,
Well, that's the one he said flopped.
it's a guilty pleasure, but yeah, no one went to see it.
Paul Antanasio of the Washington Post writes, Zemeckis and Gale have given the movie a core of feeling that makes real claims on us. For all its comedy, Back to the Future is about a kid coming to terms with his parents' inadequacies, a moment familiar to everyone, and the fulcrum in growing up.
I actually think that's spot on, and I really like that. I like the fact where he gets to see his dad is human and his mum is human,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and he begins to understand why they're like the way they are in the future, where
Yeah.
he is. I think we can all do that. We all at some point need to forgive our parents.
Okay, so the final review I have is from Peter Travers, who is a big hitter from Rolling Stone magazine. He quite short on this one. He's just put, just sign up for the trip. Back to the Future offers summer's most dazzling joyride.
See, Pete is the man.
He
He
knows his
seems
stuff,
to know
doesn't
his
he?
stuff.
That's also what a critic should do. It's just like sign up for the trip. Like
Yeah.
just go have a blast. Go to the movies. Like take your girlfriend. Like go take your kids. Just
Yeah.
live life and have fun.
I like that, Darren, because there's so many critic reviews you read where you're like, but it's a kid's film. And they're like, this is not Citizen Kane. It's like, well, no, it's a
Yeah.
kid's film. So I agree with you. I
also
think they
a
need
lot
to
of-
lighten up.
A lot of people have trouble suspending their disbelief when
Yeah.
they're watching something, or trying to go in things with preconceived notions, or having seen trailers, or having heard somebody else's opinion before you watch it.
I was watching Zombieland with my girlfriend recently, and at the end she was like, "This is unbelievable." I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, those fairground rides wouldn't just work that way. You'd need someone to press the button." I was like, "But the zombies are all believable. That's good. We're fine with that."
bit's
but it's the fact the
You have a
fairground
problem
line.
with this?
It was cute. At least,
Excellent.
but-
I don't really feel we're giving too many spoilers to this point.
No. I'm keeping an eye on spoiler watch here.
But from this point forward, we might. Okay, so this is the point where if you're listening at home, your decision, or wherever you're listening, your decision now is to, do you want to pause it, go and watch the movie, then come back, and you won't mind spoilers? Or, well, I mean, who won't have seen this movie?
Some people.
Or
There's
somebody
some
might not have seen it for like 20 years and you have to go, do you know what, I need to go and watch it before.
And people get smug about not seeing stuff. They'll be like, "Oh, I've never seen a Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
I've
they
never
do.
seen. I didn't
Yeah.
watch Game of Thrones like the common people." It's like, get out.
Okay, right, well, we are heading into Spoiler City, so let's go. So, what did we miss about Back to the Future? This could be interesting because there could be quite a few things we've missed over the years that you just sort of you watch the same thing over and again, but there are things that you didn't notice.
But there's little things, just like I know Darren's going to get into the thematical stuff that I've missed because he's good at that. But there's the actual little nods in the storyline, isn't there? So Twin Pines Mall at the start of it becomes
Lone Pine
Mall because obviously Marty.
When he drives out of that, he goes over one of the Twin Pines.
That's right.
Leaves one
That's
pine.
right. And it's them little details in the background that... I love all that because when you've seen it a million times, you still sort of go, oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's also little things like that which are just good filmmaking. Like it's commonly regarded as one of the greatest openings to cinema. Spielberg really sets it up. And, the opening scene, you've got the panning around Doc's apartment and it's just telling you all the information that crazy eccentric person's manor burns down. There's all these kind of clocks ticking, and then we see the plutonium, and we see it 3 times. This is called the rule of 3 because they're assuming that you're seeing stuff in the cinema where you're distracted, so they'll hit you with images or lines 3 times so to make sure the audience get it if it's important. It even does it weirdly with Twin Pines Mall. It's like, you got to meet me at 1:15 at Twin Pines Mall, and he's like, 1:15 in the morning, don't forget, meet me at 1:15 at Twin Pines Mall. It's like, okay, we know we're gonna he's gonna be
it's
there.
like a commercial on TV, isn't it? They always say things over and over again, like the website address, they repeat it multiple times,
and then the TV comes on and there's a plutonium warning, and then Marty kicks his skateboard under the bed or whatever, and there's the plutonium. Then on the way out, he picks up his skateboard, and there's the plutonium. It's like, this plutonium is going to factor into this storyline a bit later.
So on the behind the scenes I was watching with the Bobs, they talk about payoff a lot. And they talked about when they were putting the script together, they literally started with index cards to start with. So they were like, okay, Marty goes back in the past, Marty comes back to the future, what have we got in between? He invents rock and roll. And they started with these index cards and then started plotting it out like that. And they were saying about how payoff was the big thing. And that's what they really wanted to do in this. I think that's why it's so satisfying, because you get, like you say, all these little hints, and then it pays off at the end and you go, yes.
And it is a lot of foreshadowing. So just after he leaves Doc, he meets up with his girlfriend, who is stunning, by the way. I remember having a huge crush on her when I was young.
Claudia Wells.
Yeah. And she wasn't the original, though. We're going to get into that.
Oh, yes.
But a lady shoves a collection can in their face.
Save the clock tower.
Save the clock tower. 30 years ago today. And you're like, why is they talking about this? And then it pays off. And of course, there's the photo. There's loads of images in Doc's apartment. There's images, I'm sure, of Einstein. That's
the dog.
Oh yeah, Einstein the dog, but also Albert Einstein. And there's Benjamin Franklin, and then there's Thomas Edison, and it's setting up the themes of electricity and stuff and time. And there's a picture of Howard Lloyd in Safety First, where he's hanging from a clock.
Yes.
And then at the end of the movie, Doc is hanging from a clock.
Yeah.
Like, this is so well constructed. It's,
and in this
still,
but did you know also in the beginning when it goes through all the clocks, one of the clocks is him hanging off one of the the shorthand.
That's amazing.
But maybe that's what makes this film so repeatedly watchable, because there's so many things in it that you maybe missed the first time, and that's why it's had. Sometimes you think, imagine watching this for the first time, but we've obviously got it in our DNA. So when we're watching it now, we're seeing all these nice little textures come out of it and all these little nods, which are just fantastic.
Another thing I noticed this time, do you know, is it, you don't know which indie is it? Is it Temple of Raiders of the Lost Ark, isn't it? Where he could basically not be in that movie and the story.
That's what they say, Raiders, yeah.
Well, this is kind of similar, because I was watching it again and I was thinking, well, who's the hero of this? Which is my kind of current obsession with movies.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, exactly.
The DeLorean.
Yeah, exactly. That's a star. But the hero should go on a quest, and they should evolve as a person, and they should be someone different than who they are at the beginning. And Marty is the same cocky teenage kid at the beginning as he is at the end, except at the end he has a cool Toyota truck. So it's like, well, who is the hero? And actually Marty is kind of playing the mentor character, the Gandalf or the Obi-Wan or whatever, because he's actually mentoring his dad, who is this timid. He's basically like, if you're writing characters, it's good to give them a flaw, and that they go on a quest and they solve that flaw. So it's like it's like Wizard of Oz and the Scarecrow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And George is a coward. He's kind of bullied, and he's weak, and he's nothing. And we see what that looks like as an adult in the 80s. And so, and there's that great scene when his future wife is, screaming, and I think his arm's bent behind his back, and he forms a fist, then he hits him. And that moment, he basically becomes the hero, and he's now strong. He's confident. He's got the girl. And then we see that, decades later, and he's now, successful. His kids love him. He's if anything, bullying Biff a little bit, which is a little bit harsh.
Because if you can, if you put your mind to it, Darren, you can achieve anything.
Yeah.
By punching someone.
Yeah.
Violence is not always the answer.
That's right,
But
kids.
he grew some balls. He
did.
had an epiphany, one of those moments
And,
where
and he stopped being a peeping Tom looking through young women's curtains.
See, these are all the side quests going on in the
They are,
hero's
right?
journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a nice reversal. It was like the future son is mentoring the father. It's rare to see stuff like that.
Yeah, I've never seen anything.
And a big impact, and this is weird, when you were talking about him clenching his fist and doing all that, I could literally hear the score and the soundtrack in my head of the music from Alan Silvestri. It's still one of my favourite all-time scores. It's
tension in the...
it's so exciting, it's so great, and it's
Perfect.
such a great theme. When I used to swim as a kid in swimming galas and things, I used to think of the Back to the Future theme tune to make me go faster, because it was such...
There's a lot to be said for the music in this film.
I don't know why that memory just came back to me right now, but it did. It was like, duh, duh, duh. But yeah, some of the musical score themes are amazing. But then on top of that, you've obviously got the Huey Lewis, Power of Love, Back in Time, and all them kind of things throughout it. And then the Johnny B. Good scene, which I confess, and I know you're a musician as well, Mark, but Johnny B. Good scene was the one that made me want to pick up a guitar.
There you go.
That was the scene where I'm like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah. Have you got a top 5 facts? Have you got any facts?
I got facts.
What are we going to call it? Top of the day?
Top of the day.
Sorry, Irish.
Top 5 of the day?
I don't know if there are 5 facts on this one.
How many have you got?
Okay.
What have you got?
I'll just talk through some of the bits
Go for
that
it.
I took, because I watched the behind the scenes, as I like to do on these things when there's a behind the scenes available. And there's a lot of behind the scenes available for Back to the Future.
This film was well documented.
Yeah, some of these things aren't going to shock people because they're actually very widely well known, but I'll rattle off a few anyway. So originally, when they were trying to cast Marty McFly, they didn't have a lot of time window, and apparently Bob Zemeckis said if we didn't make the film in this time, they were going to cancel it, so they had to rush. They wanted Michael J. Fox originally, believe it or not, but he was tied to Family Ties, the TV show, and the producer said, no, you can't have him. So they ended up with Eric Stoltz, great actor, and they did 5 weeks with Eric Stoltz in the filming. They said he was very pro, but his comedy wasn't quite on it.
Wasn't what they were looking for.
And it wasn't how they wrote it, I think, how the Bobs described it. It wasn't how they wrote it, and it wasn't quite so. Bob Zemeckis said they had to make the horrific decision to let him go, and then he was allowed to reshoot the 5 weeks of work. They went back, basically begged for Michael J. Fox, who said, the producer then said, is it Gary Goldberg, the producer of Family Ties? He says, okay, you can have him if Michael likes the script. And then what happens next is Michael J. Fox is working. I wrote this down because I remember reading his biography, his autobiography, and thinking, well, that's a tough schedule. But he was working from 10 till 5 during the day on Family Ties. And then he would jump in. He basically had like a van or something where he could sleep on the way to the Back to the Future set, and then he would shoot night shifts from like 6 till 5 in the morning. Yeah. And then they would carry him out. He would be back, and he did this for months. So even he, by the end of it, says I was absolutely knackered and wasn't quite sure. But
why the majority of this film is at nighttime?
Quite possibly.
Eric Stoltz was coming off of a movie called Mask, and he's a really good dramatic actor in it.
And this is completely different.
And his view of it was a tragedy. Because in his opinion, like Michael J. Fox's character had had this amazing experience, but then no one's going to remember it. Like his entire childhood doesn't exist because it's now the new future. So he just saw it as a remarkable tragedy and would play it too seriously.
Yeah, I saw some of the original. There's a few clips of him original where they compare the two, and he's just very. There's no charisma there. There's no.
Well, Zemeckis was saying it's how Michael J. Fox would react to everything, and that's what they wanted.
Exactly what they were looking for.
Yeah. Michael J. Fox said in an interview he wasn't even sure he was that good in it because I think he was that out of it,
tired.
Balancing.
Yeah, the agent called him when it released, and he picked up the phone and was like, "I'm so sorry, I was sleep deprived. Like next time I'll do better." And he was like, "No, Michael, this is like
this is big.
Biggest movie of the weekend.
Maybe you do better when you're sleep deprived."
Yeah, exactly.
But did you also know that they didn't tell him the first time they asked for Michael J. Fox? They told him that they can't have him, but they never told Michael J. Fox.
That's right. Yeah, because
they told him the second time because they had to they were considering if you agree to the schedule, you can go, but.
Because apparently he was on Teen Wolf feeling a bit miserable under all that makeup doing the Teen Wolf stuff. And he was going, oh, damn, they're filming down the road with Spielberg in this film that looks really good with Crispin Glover, and I quite like him. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. But
I was just going to say, when it was Eric Stoltz had cast Melora Hardin as the girlfriend.
Yes.
But she was taller than Michael J. Fox. So they gathered all the women on set together and said, would a teenage girl date someone shorter than them? And they were like, nope, get her gone.
I did not know that. Wow, I did not know that.
And so
That's
they
good.
replaced her with Claudia Wells, she's only a fraction smaller than him, though. I mean, it's close.
Yeah.
But she's got great screen presence and charisma.
You love Claudia Wells.
I thought back then,
So one of the other things is we're on about the title of it. So they had the Back to the Future title, really excited, and one of the executives said, no, I don't like the title. I think I want to call it The Spaceman from Pluto. So it was almost called Spaceman from Pluto, but then the interview with Steven Spielberg, when they asked him about it, he said, I just kind of laughed it off as a joke and genuinely said, oh, you gave us a laugh with that title this morning, and just kind of pushed on and just ignored it. So there you go. Would it have worked with Spaceman from Pluto? No. It's such a good title, Back to the Future, isn't it?
Yeah.
So originally it was going to be a time chamber.
Yeah, made of a refrigerator.
Yeah. And at some point they said, oh, it'd make more sense to be, a movable automobile. So ended up as the DeLorean and everything else. And then they were talking about, do they have a time travel sequence and everything, but decided again it was just instantaneous. And they put in the sparks and the lightning bolts. And that was all Industrial Light and Magic, who obviously are the big company who did Star Wars and everything else back in the day. And the other bit, which was interesting, was originally the ending was meant to take place on a nuclear test site, so they could harness the nuclear explosion to get him back to the future. And unfortunately, it was too expensive to do it.
It was like $6 million or something, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Crazy.
So they're like, well, we can't afford that. So they had to shoot it on the back lot. But then it works better for the movie. And Zemeckis says that in many interviews. He's like, well, that's one of them instances where the constraints in the budget meant it was, you had the clock tower, and it was all about this little village then in the middle of nowhere, and it wasn't quite. And I can't imagine anything else now. You can't imagine it being in the middle of a desert on a nuclear site. It's like, no, because that ending bit where the tension in that is still, I've seen it, 1,000 times at least, and every time I watch that bit with the music going and everything else, it's still perfect for me.
It's weird how also in that film, any little change could have affected the whole film.
Yeah.
Made it not. Like the ending could have been shit, which would have ruined it, or something like that. Or they could have stuck with Eric Stoltz, which would have made it not as good.
Yeah.
There's a Oscar-winning scriptwriter called William Goldman who did like Princess Bride and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Stepford Wives and stuff. And his whole comment on the movie industry is nobody knows anything. Like nobody knows anything. Nobody knew that March of the Penguins was going to be a hit documentary. Like most of these movies, it's just luck. And whether it's this one, Gladiator was started to be shot with, I think, 20 pages of script. Die Hard was basically made up as it went along. Casablanca didn't have an ending when they started. Like this is kind of typical as how,
it's because mainly you don't know how your audience is going to react.
No, totally.
And that's your success, and there are critics. That's your success or your failure. You just never know if it's going to hit.
Which is why I think it's really mean to be kind of down on movies when they don't work out, because it's so hard. You start with a blank page, and to bring that many moving pieces together with so much pressure from studio execs and test screenings, and there's so many stories like that. So I'm really pleased that this nailed it, really.
Yeah.
And I guess this could be my final fact, because I could talk about Back to the Future for 4 hours, which is not the length of this podcast, but they scrambled to finish it. So 3 weeks later after they'd finished it, it was in previews. The previews went so well, completely. I don't think they even had the full scoring and everything or the full effects, but the previews went so well that they were like, okay, we need to get this out. So literally it was 9.5 weeks after shooting day finished, it was in the theaters because they rushed it out to get it to the 4th of July weekend.
It was, yeah.
It did a big hit in the first weekend, and then the second weekend it did more. What did he say? I think it was Bob Gale said, for 11 of the 12 weeks, it was number one movie in America.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, everywhere.
It really hit.
It really hit.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis have still got the rights and won't let anyone remake it. Thank you.
Yes. I'm glad that is the case. A lot of franchises have been ruined by that.
I enjoy some of the remakes, but this is one of them that I feel like, no, do not touch this. Do other time travel films by all means, but do not touch this. I don't want to see this reimagined. This is how it is. And that goes for the 3 in the trilogy.
The other one I had was about the girlfriend. She got replaced with Elizabeth Shue.
Oh, in part 2.
In the second one.
And 3.
Because, what was the original actress's name?
Claudia Wells.
She had some sort of family tragedy, so she couldn't commit to the second one, so they made the switch.
Right.
I think in the end didn't really make that much difference.
I love Elizabeth Shue in her later movies. I loved her in Adventures in Babysitting, but I think she overacts she's a little bit too like, and there's a bit where she's running in Back to the Future 2 where she's running around the house trying not to be seen, and it feels a little bit like Mr. Bean doing it.
I don't want any more bad words said against Elizabeth Shue.
I love her, but
Darren.
I think, yeah.
She doesn't really have much of a part in this one anyway, so.
No, exactly.
Well, I think I know we're getting into part 2, Back to the Future Part 2 here, but I remember them saying like, oh, well, at the end of the first one, we'd put her in the car, so then we had to obviously continue that story, because they never thought this was getting a sequel. That ending was just meant to be a bit of a, it's a flying car, just a nice little tag at the end. And everyone's going, oh, you obviously were going to do a sequel. And they were like, no, we didn't even know this.
Well, when you make over $250 million in the box office,
yeah,
and you're onto a winner, then you probably should.
Then
but maybe they wouldn't have if they couldn't have thought of an idea, because they seem very protective over their franchise. So
potentially,
maybe had a good enough idea.
But obviously, then they had to refilm them scenes with Elizabeth Shue at the start of Back to the Future Part 2. So if you kind of put them side by side, there's slight differences with... I could go on for weeks. And off the back of that, apparently the script was rejected for Back to the Future for 44 times before it was finally greenlit. And a lot of that was to do because at that time, the studios wanted like raunchy teen comedies.
Yeah.
That was kind of all the rage. And they were like, oh yeah, this is a nice little film. But it's
back like Roadhouse and stuff and...
Yeah. What was the other ones? When was
Porky's and
Porky, Ridgemont High, all these kind of things. Mind you, that was a bit of a drama as well. But yeah, apparently they wanted more raunchy stuff. They went to Disney at one point, they said, and Disney got to the whole bit with the mother and the son and the slight bit of underlying incest in there, and we're like, nope, we're out. So it wasn't until they got a producer and obviously Spielberg on board and everything.
There was also a monkey in it.
Was that meant to be a monkey originally?
Yeah.
I didn't know that one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called like Shemp or something.
Didn't know that.
And then with the producer was like, no, you don't ever make a movie with monkeys in. They're never successful. And they were like, what about that Clint Eastwood movie? What is it?
Every Way Which Bill Loose. Yeah.
And they're like, that's not a monkey. That was an orangutan. So that works.
It's interesting. There's a parallels with the music industry about record companies would want something's a success. We want that.
Yeah, we
so
want
they
that
just
again.
sign up all the clones of that band and just that's all we want. No, we don't want this. We're going to reject.
Yeah.
They reject perfectly good things because they want this thing that's currently popular.
It's why we go
very
through
similar.
waves. It's why you might not have a Western for like 10 years. Because they're not popular. And then someone makes one. It's like, they are popular.
It's like fashion.
The
goes in
superhero
waves.
wave that we've been through for the last however many years. But this was apparently the first Amblin project at Universal with Steven Spielberg not directing as well. So they got it through. They didn't know what it was going to do, and yet it was such a good film that everyone just loved it. And let's face it, here we are all these years later, and we all love it too.
Can we just also point out that Christopher Lloyd was, how old was he during this movie? I think he was 47. No, 46.
What?
I know, I'm 47.
In that movie, he's 3 years older than me.
Yeah, and he's
That's who you remind me of.
younger than me. Obviously, I mean, obviously he's playing 65 in the future, but when you go back, but I don't think he feels much younger in the future.
He doesn't look aged or younger, no.
And I'm like, I'm not eccentric and falling apart.
It's like when he's watching himself on the tape.
But then, of course, Leah Thompson was playing, 46-year-old when she was in the makeup and everything, and now she's about 50, but still looks very nice. So maybe they didn't quite call that right, but for the film, it works perfectly. That 3 hours of makeup.
I think it's also why we think we're going to be older when we're old.
Yeah.
Because we've got a perception of like, when we're teenagers, we look at someone like Doc, who was apparently 46, but we're like, oh, they're ancient. And then we get to this age, we're like, I don't feel ancient.
Unless, of course, you throw Paul Rudd in the mix, in which case it's hard to know which way is up anymore because
that's
defying the gravity.
Yeah.
Right, okay, takeaway. So this is where we say what we think of the film, our personal thoughts on the film, not just based on what the outside world thinks. Darren, what did you get from this film?
I just remembered a poem. I remembered the poet just as you were talking. I was, I'm going to mention that poet. And then by the time I got to this part, I'd just forgotten what the poet was called. I want to say it's like Philip Lark or something. There's a poem where, and it starts, they fuck you up, your mum and your dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with some insecurities and add some special just for you. And then it kind of goes on that they were fucked up in their turn by their parents in like stern top hats and stuff. And that's kind of what I take away from this movie is that if you could go back and see your parents when they weren't your parents and the lives they lived and them struggling at school or their first heartbreak or when they were in hospital for the first time and scared, you would just humanize them. And the issue is, I think when we're young, we can be in danger of putting our parents on a pedestal. Particularly when we're very young. They're our gods. They're our son. We circle around them when we're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. So I think it's a movie about compassion and towards your parents, and just realizing that life can be hard.
I agree. It makes you think about things in that way. It makes you think, I wonder what they were like, and it really does get your mind kind of going back to what would it have been like if I was in that time. But my bigger takeaways were sort of more the destiny and the kind of how it's your life. Your life's not written. And I know I'm quoting Back to the Future Part 3 at this point here, but your life's not written. It's up to you to make it what you want to make it. And for me, who maybe confidence now and again is an issue, it's that whole bit around put your mind to it, you can achieve anything. Because don't forget, Marty's there at the start, and he's got his cassette with his rock band, and he doesn't want to send it in. And what if they say I'm no good? And then obviously he goes through the George McFly saying the same thing. What if they tell me I'm no good? And seeing that reflected back at him by the end of the film, obviously then he's thinking a bit differently about it as he's become the Yoda coach, mentor, like Darren said. So he's kind of learned through that. So it's almost that fantasy fulfillment payoff. That's the word the Bobs were using. They like to plant these little seeds and then pay it off. And it's just the most... I can still watch it, even though I know the lines in my head almost, and it's just this really satisfying ending because you've got the payoff, you've got the girlfriend, Jennifer's there, and that scene at the end, and I can't decide if it's the music or just the cut-in or just the whole thing, but that scene at the end where he has to get back and the thing goes and the tension just keeps building, and then it eventually he goes back. It's still satisfying, even though I've seen it a million times. And I watch a lot of movies like you guys do, but that scene and that whole... Because that scene comes off the back of the Chuck Berry thing, which I'm already on a high from watching him do his Chuck Berry thing. Maybe you guys weren't ready for that, but your kids are going to love it. I say that a lot. But it's right, isn't it? It's different generations.
Absolutely.
And when he gets back to the future... After that sequence, I'm always left with a grin on my face, and it's one of my timeless favorites. And if Letterboxd was asking me, my top 4, I really struggle with that because I like so many movies, but that would definitely be one I'd have to put in there. For me,
it's about relationships, the different types of relationships you have, the different phases you go through it, and obviously time travel can affect that, but like his relationship with Doc Brown, how does he even know Doc Brown?
I was going to ask that, do we think that's a problem now, if that was made now, that's a problematic relationship?
Test of time.
That's like Jimmy Savile kind of.
Like, it was never explained how they know each other, because it's such an odd pairing. How would they come into contact in the first place? Doc operates through the middle of the night, clearly, and he likes to sleep. He's always sleeping, so they take their relationship, Doc and Marty, for all the way through when he reads the letter and he's got a bulletproof vest on, and we thought he was dead.
I figured, what the hell?
Yeah, just even
thinking about the moments make me smile. I'm like,
just for me, especially when I was younger, just the power of friendship and loyalty and sticking together and going through thick and thin.
And you were saying your young daughter's just watched it or started to watch bits of it?
Majority of it, she's only 3, and she loves.
Generationally brilliant.
We now go on to Test of Time. In Test of Time, this is where we'll discuss what would happen if it's like, obviously, this is an old film. What if it was released in 2024?
I think it would hold up. I think with the Doc and Marty relationship, that's very close to Rick and Morty. So I think we've kind of been eased in to that kind of relationship. I think that would hold up. The only thing I don't think would hold up, even in terms of representation, like there's the African American who's working in the cafe, and doesn't he say you should be mayor?
Mayor Goldie Wilson.
Yeah, then becomes the mayor. I think you'd have more diversity if it was made now, which would be good. The main thing I don't think you could do is just be like the generic Libyans. You can't.
I think they've taken that out of the musical I was reading the other day. That bit doesn't exist in there somehow.
It's just and they're so stereotypical, like hanging out like a truck with like a rocket launcher. It's just an oversimplified bad guy, and I think they would have more nuance now.
If anyone listening has any ideas of what would happen if this was released today, you can email us hello@moviesinanutshell.com or message us on social media. If you've got any thoughts on what you would think would happen, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think, Paul?
I think it's a timeless classic. I'm saying nothing against it.
I think it was. I agree. I think it would stand up. They obviously might have the odd change or edit, but I think the story alone is strong enough to.
I mean, the purity of it almost comes from the fact that the technology in 1985 isn't what it is now as well. So the technology of the DeLorean is obviously the tech, whereas if it was made now, what we've all got phones and pads, it doesn't need that. That's why
simplicity is what kind of makes it stand out. Like it doesn't. Yeah. I don't think it lacked from the lack of special effects, even though the budget was only 19 million, which wasn't a lot at the time. It didn't need it,
and they were rushed. The special effects were rushed. There's some like ropey stuff.
Maybe if there was some of ideas that they had before, like a nuclear power plant or going into space, then you would need.
I think as a lecturer, I think the teacher would be presented better. You wouldn't just be a guy running around with a bald head being like, slackers, you're never going to amount to anything. That's bad teaching. It's frowned upon when you do that.
Yes, but is it of the time?
Yes, of the time, exactly.
So they would change that now.
Yeah, they would change that now.
Because you wouldn't get away with that now.
He'd be an inspirational and kind tutor who's just like...
See, this is why I don't think it needs to be moved to 2024, because they're the little nuances that just make it what it is. The bit that's scary is when you... and I keep seeing the meme pop up, like... Back to the Future. Marty went back to 1955 from 1980. You know, you do realise that if it was today, was us going back to the 90s.
Stop.
There you go. There you go. Does that freak you out, Darren?
Yeah,
Isn't it?
30 years ago was the 70s.
There you go.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. I remember thinking that.
But wait, crazy. The math doesn't math. Yeah. So I don't like to think about it too much. So whenever there's a rumble of a remake of Back to the Future, I'm always like, no, I want to keep that in its nice bubble. Yeah, I love time travel films, make as many as you want, but I feel like as long as the Bobs can hold on to that, I hope they do, because maybe they'll make a good remake, but I don't want them to touch it.
Okay, so as this was my choice, we will go on to Worth a Watch. I'm going to go slightly different. It's not a movie, it's not a documentary, it's a comedy TV series on the iPlayer.
Try us.
It's called Only Child.
No idea.
No idea also.
Good.
Tell us about it.
It stars Greg McHugh, Gregor Fisher.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go. It stars Gregor Fisher. It's just it's a story. It's a classic of your parents getting older. So the role reversal of you becoming the parent, them struggling with various things, but also you as a child still trying to live your life. It's about he's an actor, but it's not going so well. But he keeps getting drawn back to his dad, whose mum's died. So the dad's on his own.
Is it like a sitcom then, or is it more of a drama?
Yeah, it's a sitcom. Okay. Yeah, it's really funny, clever, well written, like witty, and it's just the dichotomy between him trying to be an actor, but he keeps coming back to have to look after his dad. His dad's sort of going a bit, forgetting things, and he's having to sort of forget this high flying lifestyle to look after his dad. Will he go? Will he take this part? And then he's like, an old flame comes back, and he's like, oh, that as well, I forgot about that. And he's like, meets all friends, and there's just a smuttering of like characters through it who are just really strong as well. So I just recommend anyone go and watch it.
It's on iPlayer?
It's on the iPlayer. There's only 6 episodes. They're all out, I think, about 40 minutes. There you go. Only Child. It's on iPlayer. If you do want to get in touch with us here at the podcast, you can email us, hello@moviesinanutshell.com. Tell us any movie-related stories, something like, if you've been to the cinema, did anything funny happen, or anything at home, or even inspirational stories about films that have like changed your life, or things like that. Any stories you've got.
Back to the Future.
If you give us anything like that, I'll read them out. So you can hit us on the socials. All our contact details are in the show notes. Hit us up, and we'd like to hear from you. So that just leaves the next movie that we're going to watch, and it's going to be your choice, Darren. What have you got?
It is going to be my choice. So I'm keeping the time theme going with a movie that I don't think many people have seen and gets overlooked a lot. It's called In Time, and it's probably Justin Timberlake's film, but Amanda Seyfried and Cillian Murphy are in support as well. It's a fantastic movie. I don't want to really give any more information on it than that, except that I like movies where they get young people to question the nature of society. And I think this used to be one of the movies I would show my students every year. It would be this and like V for Vendetta, and then later on it was Snowpiercer. But even things like The Hunger Games, Donald Sutherland only took that role because he wanted young people to critique the society that they live in. And I think if a movie can do that, then we're onto something.
Well, I've not seen it, but I'm looking forward to it.
I think I've seen parts of it. But now I'm looking to get my teeth into it. So there we go. Next week's episode will be In Time. Look forward to it. So thanks for listening. If you want to help us here, the best thing you can do is share our show. If you could think of anyone who would like this particular episode or the podcast in general, send them a link. And again, any questions you want to ask us, if you've got any recommendations for movies you'd like us to review. Currently, The last episode of this month will be chosen by you, our wonderful listeners. So get your suggestions in and we will pick through the best and let you know what we're going to do. Okay, so until next time, I'm Mark saying goodbye.
I'm Darren saying goodbye.
Great Scott!